Hey there, it's Mark at Woody Creative, and we're talking again with Stephen Putanti at Family Law Class. And today, Stephen, we are talking about wish lists, about what is a wish list? Why does somebody want to come in with a wish list? This is, by the way, one of our 10 minutes or less series, and I'll start my watch right now. So what's a wish list?
All right. A wish list is what you want out of the case. And in a case, let's take the most common case, a divorce with kids. A divorce with kids is actually two cases. You know, it's a case that deals with the children, when, where, how, and why. What do we do with them? How do we do possession and access, child support, all that kind of stuff. And then the other case, the other sub case is the property, dividing up our property. And so, you know, under the organizational theme that we've been going through in these podcasts, I talk about keeping organized. So you should have a separate thing that says, okay, I'm going to focus on the kids. And usually your attorney, if I usually tell my clients, here's the things that you need to start thinking about, considering. A lot of people throw around the term custody in child-related cases. There's no real custody in Texas. We call it conservatorship on one side and possession and access on the other. Conservatorship is the normal duties, rights, and responsibilities of a parent, medical, dental, taking them to school, putting a roof over their head, taking them to the doctors, all that stuff is conservatorship issues. And then possession and access is just what it sounds like, is when you get to have the child or children exclusively, right? So you make that section and you say, well, what would be my wish for this? Okay, I want the children to live at my house primarily and the other parent has a possession schedule. Or maybe because of my work schedule and how I do, the kids are going to live at the other parent's house and I'm going to have a possession schedule. Whatever that is, you make your wish list, what you think it should look like. And you work that up with your attorney because, I say, go do the shotgun approach, throw everything on a piece of paper and then organize it later. I heard a story about a guy once about how to write a book. And he said he just took out a giant stack of Post-its and all the ideas he had, he would put them on a little Post-it and put them on his living room wall. And then, by the end of the day of a brainstorming session, he had all these Post-its everywhere. And then he would walk around and he'd put them into subcategories and he'd start to organize his thoughts. You could do the same thing. You could sit down and obviously the first thing that pops into your mind is probably something really important to you. So you're going to write that out and kind of spell it out and think about it. Do a lot of thinking prior to meeting with an attorney or prior to doing something, going to court, going to mediation. Too many people show up and they expect the meeting with the attorney to be the brainstorming session. It shouldn't be the brainstorming session. You should have that before you walk in there knowing what's important to you.
Right. Okay, so you kind of touched on priorities a little bit. If your client has a wish list, obviously the other side has a wish list as well. So this is kind of a matter of recognizing you might not get everything you want. So in addition to even establishing the priorities, are there deals? Do you encourage them to think about exchanges or deals that they might be willing to make if they get a lot of pushback that they might not otherwise have received?
Yeah, that's a really good point. When I have the wish list, when I tell the client to do their wish list, I tell them to just imagine the other person doesn't exist. Don't think about what they're going to say about you wanting that car or the house or the kids living at your house, whatever it is. Don't worry so much about them. Let the attorney talk to you about that and let them put down on your wish list what you actually want, whether you're going to get it or not. And you may or may not get certain things, and there's going to be some give and take and negotiating throughout the case. But don't worry about that in the beginning. You're just brainstorming. It could be a terrible idea. It's never going to happen. I'll give you an example. I had a client once who the husband was a surgeon and made a couple $1 million a year. And she was a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. And she wanted to keep the house. Well, the house, was a $2.5 million house with a pretty hefty mortgage. I don't remember what it was, but it was tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And I said, well, you're not working. You're going to be literally starting from scratch after 20 years of being a stay-at-home mom. Practically you can't keep this house. And she was very upset. And I said, because when I asked her about why are you upset about not keeping the house, she said, because she wanted her daughters or the kids to grow up in the house. And I said, the daughters were teenage daughters. And I said, you know what, I don't know your daughters personally, but most kids like shopping. Most girls like shopping. said, take them shopping one Sunday morning for houses and watch how much they care about the house that they are living in and growing up the rest of their childhood in it. And of course, 2 hours later on a Sunday, I get a phone call, after they've been looking at houses going, we found a house we want to move into. So it fixed the problem, like the wish list was, I want the house, but practically there was no way she can afford the mortgage.
Right.
So just throw that stuff on there and then figure it out later. Like, is this a possibility? Is this something I could trade for, something that's even more important to me?
Yeah.
So priorities are important, but first is the brainstorming session of what do I want and how am I going to get it? And some of that might involve bringing in friends or family members to have that conversation with, as long as it's, you're not married to that decision. If your best friend tells you, oh, you absolutely positively have to keep the house, or you have to have this, or you have to have that, take it with a grain of salt. It's your case. You have to make the ultimate decisions and, just listen, be a good listener.
So most of my lawyering I learned from the TV and the movies. And it seems like there's a whole lot of surprise. I'm sure you watch these kind of things and go, that's ridiculous, or that's spot on. But it seems like there's a lot of surprise when there's these divorce attorneys and the clients are sitting across the table from each other, usually a little angry, not talking to each other, that they're sort of surprised when one person says, I really want this, or I'd be willing to give this thing up. When you say, you advise them to imagine that, don't worry about what they want. Do you find that your client often is surprised about what the other side is going to demand or what they're going to give up?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It never ceases to amaze. You never really know until you're in the trenches what someone else is capable of doing or willing to do. You and I talked about this story I told about a guy who had bought a house and put so much effort into it and money, and he loved this house, and he was willing to literally let go of a whole lot of property just so he can keep the house. And we couldn't get to a settlement. We couldn't get them where they needed to settle. And the house was never on the table. That was always in his column.
Okay.
And about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we felt like the case was never going to settle. And my client out of the clear blue said, you know what? Give her the house. Give her the house. We'll make all this work. She'll do this. I'll do that. But she can have the house. Well, long story short, when the mediator told her that he was willing to give up to the house, she broke down in tears, crying, couldn't believe that she brought him to that point where he was willing to give up the house. And she let him keep the house, and she let him keep the $40,000 difference that we were at.
And then they stayed married. And then
I wish I could say that.
We were so close.
We were close.
Almost wrapped it up. We'll edit that out, and we'll just have them that they stayed together forever. Okay.
We all went to happy hour, had a few drinks, and everybody stayed together. I wish I could say that.
In fact, here they are now, Jim and Karen.
No, but it was funny because on his wish list from day one until till 10 minutes before we settled, the house was always in his column. And him just saying, look, you know what? We need to make this happen. I'm willing to give it up was something that he never expected her to just basically say, yeah, I'm okay with that, And so it worked out. But wish lists are important because it helps you think about your case. And it's one of the hardest things to do is when a client says to me, well, what do you think I should do?
What do you think I care about?
What do you think I care about? Right. What do you think I should do with this or that? And I'll throw in my 2 cents, you really can't afford the mortgage and you can't refinance the house in your name because you haven't been working for 20 years. But, I could throw up stuff like that. But, it's really personal preference, and courts are not usually wanting to tell you, well, this is what you're going to do. They want you to come up with the arrangement. They hate to make that decision.
Okay.
Judges will tell you straight out, I don't want to decide what happens to your kids. I don't want to decide what happens to your property. You decide that stuff. And we tried to get people to do that. But, like you said, sometimes the anger is really elevated and they just can't agree on stuff.
Yeah. It does sound like there's some gamesmanship kind of at play here, where we've got about less than a minute left, but some gamesmanship. Like, I don't think the person you talked about was trying to trick the spouse into, oh, he was willing to do that. Okay. But who knows? I mean, sometimes either kindness or toughness, you've probably seen lots of things work that allowed somebody to get what they wanted to get. Yeah.
No, yeah. It's every case is different. Every story is different. And you have to you have to be flexible as the case is going by.
Okay. So create a wish list. Think about in advance. What is it you want? Put them in priority. Consider maybe there's even subsets of packages of things. I'd be willing to give away, A and B if I can get C, D, and E or those kinds of things, because those kind of negotiations might be coming up. It sounds like it's a lot of negotiating skill.
It is. And it's something that you're going to have to live with, and you don't want to go to a court and have the judge decide that for you, and neither one of you likes the result.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. Our time is up. We will talk to you next time.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.